that Lunara was already what L5 were leaning toward, just with Nachogen. It's been sort of a constant pick here and there.
Yeah.
And then Uther comes out, it's like,
it's just
okay.
snap pick, like
Yes.
all day, man. All day into an Uther. But that was like, when Lunara released, Uther was still sitting at probably 2 or 3 slot when it comes to value of supports. And every time a team could push, you pick them tier 1, you ban out tier 2, they go into the Uther, you lock in the Lunara, and you said GG. That was the general arcing strategy that we saw at the time when Lunara made her way into the meta.
Old school meta strats coming back for both teams. Once again, a Lunara, once again an Uther. We're tied 1-1 in the grand finals of the Eastern Clash, and we're heading into Game 3 on Infernal Shrines. Welcome back to the Eastern Clash, where once again MVP Black and L5 are tied up 1-1 in this best of 5 grand finals. L5 once again busting out their Lunara. They've always been kind of known for being willing to play her ever since their formation. Sort of a pocket pick.
3, 2,
But Uther.
1.
But Uther is that's the story of the game.
Whereas Murky was the last.
Yeah, now it's Uther. You know, used to be a little bit more meta, but I would say, honestly, I can support a Murky more than I can an Uther in the current meta. Feel the heat taken for Zarya at 1. A lot of pressure going to be applied there onto the front line as long as she has high energy. Regen Master there for, you know, we'll keep track of the Uther build. Conjurer's Pursuit used to be the standard. It's going to be able to help with his mana problems that he can have. We have seen teams move into the Frisbee build as an argument of getting the cooldown onto your W to be able to deal with Lunara's split pressure. So opting not to have that, at least not here at level 1. Typically you took it at 1 and 4, but it's still an option to be able to pick up there at the 4. We'll see where they go. Ever since, you know, Protection Shield has just been nerfed, you typically don't, we haven't seen, you know, Conjurers into Protection Shield there.
MVP Black does have 2 warriors, so there's maybe the argument, but
yeah,
I think they'll be wanting Boundless Conviction to try to make sure that they can reach teams or the team members a little bit easier.
We'll see how it's going to work out here. I was thinking about, you know, trying to find more of the arguments here on what value can Merryday bring on the Uther. I mean, I think I can come up with better arguments for a support, a unique support, especially one like Uther, and just purely based on, you know, more experience with the hero itself. And the only other one I can come up with is you can make Zeratul question his decisions a bit more in a game. So you choose who's the kill target, which is very much going to probably be Tychus, or maybe Zarya, Ragnaros are probably the 3, and if you stick near them, suddenly what is a, you know, Seeker jump post 7 is a dead Zeratul, you know, if you properly, especially post 16 Benediction into a double stun play, but
yeah,
I mean, it does that really make up for, you know, what reigning terror is going to be Splintered Spear Lunara.
especially because generally when you would see Uther before, you had some of those follow-up stuns, and there isn't anything really except maybe Holy Ground. Lunara, first blood for MVP Black.
That's huge.
As they need to start and get a lead.
Yeah, exactly. You know, MVP pretty much has to go just snowball this game out of control if they're going to be successful here. And that's a perfect start, you know, being able to get not only a first blood, but the first Punisher. That being said, L5 does have the Dahaka to be able to get some of the side soak. No global available for MVP. They could send Ragnaros to be responsive elsewhere, but it doesn't look like he's going to yet. No, in fact, he will move on to bottom to be able to deal with that. Tyrell going towards the top lane. So only a 3-man siege, not necessarily the best. No bait over the wall, though. Small victory here for MVP, going to get a little bit more damage when it comes to the Punisher, but no more than a front wall here early on.
Hero Stalker over one who collects for Dahaka. So not planning on making sure that you have the essence, the full essence when you go into a fight, but guaranteeing, like planning it and believing that your team will be able to get the kills for you to continue to have the essence to carry forward. Yeah,
it stacks really quickly if you're successful in team fights, but I think that's a bit of the problem, right? It's kind of like Dahaka's survivability becomes like a dominance. For every pick you end up picking up for your team, suddenly it becomes that much better at being able to be self-sustaining early on.
It's kind of cool to see it with, for instance, a Li Ming.
Yeah.
Because you know, okay, all we have to do is get resets, and then we're going to be able to just keep going forward, and I can keep trying to get drags to put people back in. But in this case, maybe it is just with Leaping Strike, with the poisons that they're undoubtedly going to be oppressing MVP Black with. Then is Zeratul trying to go in and clean up just the way we saw Lunar and Illidan earlier in this tournament? Maybe that's the plan and the hope for them.
Yeah, it could be. It just makes it to where the trading into a lane has to be more beneficial for him. But that being said, Sake is not going to apply that much pressure into 1v1. Typically, the one who collects is only going to gain that much more value when you're into a losing lane like Tychus, you know, or a ranged Falstad, where eventually he will be able to surpass you through boomerang damage if you just misplay it all. But we have it 7. Splinter Spear is on line. Protection Shield was the choice there for Uther Merryday, and he's going with the cleanse. So classic Uther build across the board. Not going to go full Frisbee, but this is where Zul'jin should be able to thrive, especially around those shrines. We'll see if it's going to work out. Other than that, though, builds here are going to be standard. Actually going for the 7 on Zarya with Feel the Heat at 1, going for the increased range at high energy and the width is one where I get it, but I've never seen the argument for it. I love Feel the Heat, but even when I take that talent, it's just whenever the increased range, there's very few cases where I feel like I gain a lot of value out of that talent.
Yeah, we have to watch our energy and if Kyoch is getting a lot out of that.
Yeah.
But who is the focus? You think it's Swoy, Nacho maybe that he's trying to hit the back?
One of my favorite interactions across the board when it comes to Zarya is into Malfurion, you just kill him if he moves up for a Twilight Drink. Like with Feel the Heat, if you say high energy at all, you legitimately just look him in the eyes and say, if you want to move into my team, I will kill you before you make it, because the damage output of Zarya is just ludicrous with that talent. But other than that, yeah, it's going to be really good when it comes to shrine control, less poke, but very efficient when it comes to the clear itself on high energy. And then also it does well into the Zarya, or the Zeratul, but tries to trade Sake, though, getting caught out, throws out the cleanse onto him. And now that is going to be 1 point down. Look at the Splinter Spear spreading so much. Even after 1, that was 1 heal coming out from Merryday to save Sake, and then that's going to be the 2nd with the W. But losing 2 members here. Stun, it does land onto Zhongha, but he just blinks right on out. Beautiful route there from Swoy. Keeps him in place.
MVP Black trying to hope that they can at least trade kill for kill. Hammer of Justice takes out Zeratul, so that helps a lot, but these health bars are incredibly low for MVP Black. Saving Grace, though, they are ahead in Skeletal Defenders. If they can heal back up, take a little bit of time for that well, they could move back in here.
That greedy play from Zhongha actually might cost him this Skeletal, or this Punisher. That being said, they're down 10 right now for MVP. So will we see SCSC and friends move in? Isolation was the choice there for him on the Dahaka, so not going to have that self-survivability to go in. So Pure Smash drops. Sanctification is going to be used. Beautiful Burrow from SCSE. Noblesse is in a terrible position. He's going to be able to Dwarf Toss right out, and that is another Punisher going over to MVP Black. Zhongha with that greed there, seeing Lunara, you know, get the value there. Uther struggling to support, and that he overextends, costs him his life there. Merryday did get the Uther value. You know, we talked about Zhongha has to be a little bit more patient. That being said, I don't know if that's going to be a continuing trend. You know, it's a fool me once, fool me can't fool me again situation.
Twilight and Void used, but it's all just to back off. Tist very deep into pushing L5 back so that MVP Black can get a fort. We talked about it earlier, how important it is that they are keeping up, staying ahead even of L5 in experience. Speaking of heroic abilities, Isolation and Thornwood Vine. So no Leaping Strike this time for Lunara.
Wow, yeah, it is fully committing to the Uther problem, right? It's just going, well, I'm going to spread poison as much as I possibly can to be able to punish you there. Conjurer's Pursuit has gotten some value here. Dahaka still up in top lane. Are they going to look for the burrow play? Lunara, man, My goodness.
Really starting to break it down. Look, there is Dahaka brush talking in. Glynn's getting reset out.
Expulsion zone used, and that is going to be a winning trade considering the fact that it's a heroic for nothing. And I mean, L5 didn't have any really heroics along line themselves. They were just looking for a cheeky play, and it didn't work out. Zeratul rotated towards stop, so no XP lost. L5 is waiting for another shrine. The fact they've lost the first two is definitely crippling here for them with their composition because, you know, again, typically into what we see with the Lunara, she should be able to be winning in these trades. A lot of damage on the Nacho Gym, but the next shrine, I really feel like if L5 managed to lose, suddenly I'm questioning their ability to properly execute with this composition into the Uther. Just, it feels like it's going to be a lot more difficult for them because that is really, Lunara is now hitting the back half of the game. And Mary Day struggled from level 1, but a couple of misplays and punishment on the side of MVP have been enough to keep them in for now.
MVP very much wanting to take out this mid fort too, try to get that little experience boost to 13, but also not wanting to overcommit at this point. They understand that it is so close of a game, but they have that slight lead when it comes to structures, which is important on Infernal Shrines because you are at the will of the Shrine, the Punishers, wherever they're going to spawn, and this is a good one for them. That is the mid lane. That is where the fort is already very low.
One thing I did not think about, though, is Zarya with Divine Shield and Feel the Heat is a terrifying idea. So you just open up with very aggressive positioning, then you drop your first shield, you get high energy, drop your second, and then the minute you get to a point of lethal, if you Divine Shield, you are taking... I mean, she hits so hard. It might be in a position where, you know, it costs her a life. Reset. Gets a lot of damage out there. Going to drop the heal. One combo from Lunara there, as you can see, lowering all the HP there.
Jojo's starting to get low. Is this where the Divine Shield comes in? It is where Divine Shield's at. Void Prison's in the back. Zarya dives into it. Sanctification trying to enable and help MVP Black through this less amount of healing.
Yeah, Nachogen's getting zoned though by Reset. Jungha moved in. Good hammer adjusted there by the peel. Twilight Dream though. Smash ends up not landing there. Drag is going to be used now. Can Sake make it out? 1Q helps him. 23 skeletal defenders again.
Is he going to Molten Core?
I think that might be the case here. It looks like he is in fact going to consume the mid fort and just fling the spells out here and try and pick up as many as possible.
Tis and Kyocha are diving in again to try to see if they can supplement that, but so far L5 are maintaining a lead on these skeletal defenders. MVP Black doing what they can. They've made a risky trade in using Molten Core here, and it is not going to pay off.
It is very much not going to pay off, and we saw in that situation, Kyocha actually taking the Divine Shield there, and I was just complimenting, you know, Zarya with the Divine Shield, how scary. She had 0 energy.
Yes,
and
that is the difference.
And you're like, whoop, she's not hitting anyone for any damage. She is a wet noodle at this point, so not going to be dishing out the damage there yet, but maybe later we'll see a different, you know, high energy Zarya. And maybe a different tail there for the Divine Shield Uther. But for now, we have seen, you know, the impact that we can have with Lunara. Now hitting in that unfair advantage is going to gain exactly that over that single target support on the side of MVP.
Yeah, especially with the slows that L5 can add to that. Specifically with Burden too, he gives a lot to that unfair advantage. That has been generally the choice. I think we saw maybe one greater spell shield earlier in this event, but the favorite has definitely been unfair advantage, maximizing Nature's Toxin damage. Level lead for L5 as they look to get 16 for the next Shrine phase, get that advantage there. MVP Black still have that mid fort they could hope to take out to try to catch them back up in experience, but it's also important that they can get into the lanes, and once again, global for L5 working out really well for them.
Yeah, we do see the Shrink Ray now available for Uther, so a bit more control onto the Zeratul once more, can kind of keep him in check a little bit more, and then Benediction at 16, if that's the direction he goes, really is going to be able to aid. Between those, the one huge redeeming quality also with the Uther pick is he's like the only support that can open a team fight for anybody out of position and punish them, because you just walk up mounted, drop the Shrink Ray, then you move in Benediction double stun, and that's usually enough to enable your team to get a pick. That being said, this is a very optimistic perspective in situation to really find yourself in, and Dahaka's not the isolated target that you can make happen, you know, those type of picks happen, and he's going to be the only one separated. Usually that's like, would only be onto the Zeratul if he's looking for side soak.
That's going to be really helpful though for MVP Black finishing and Give Me 20, because that is the reduced cooldown for Shield Ally. the team is building as a unit to try to help out Uther. They have That's the Stuff too, even though that is the nerfed version of That's the Stuff for Tychus. He'll get the healing at the end versus throughout. So they're doing everything possible. They have amplified healing too for Tyrael. All of the talent adjustments to come together as a team and help out Merryday with these long cooldowns.
Yeah, that is, you know, we'll see if it's going to work out. I still do kind of fear it, but every single person at this point has spec'd into something to be able to aid their own self-sustain. 16 now achieved for MVP. Going to split L5 for now. Good route to zone here. Nade's going to reveal Zhongha. He goes in for the initiation, but Merryday not going to commit to the defensive tools to try and peel him out.
Starting the Shrine.
There goes the stun. There, it's going to connect, only hitting one. Double shields coming up from Kyocha. Zhongha, so much damage on the backline. Vorpal's in, and it's going to drop the Void.
Expulsion Zone, though, is going to separate out the team. Zul'jin going on to Kyocha. Sanctification has been used. Divine Shield is not. So not overlapping those heroic abilities, which is critical to MVP Black.
Yeah, very much so. Swoy now is going to be Holy Ground out, and that is a lot of damage. Will he be able to keep himself up? Twilight Dream is not going to connect. Not alive long enough, but Zarya's lost. Divine Shield's still up, though, and Reset is going to get it. Odin with a D shield is absolutely terrifying, and L5 is experiencing that right now. Noblesse getting double value out of those W's and keeps himself up. SESC moving in, dropping the burrow, and now will Tisk re-engage. The nade doesn't get the kill, everybody falling low, and somehow MVP Black's HP sits above that of L5.
I really thought Isolation would be the nail in the coffin on Sake, but keeping him alive. It's a 1-for-1, but MVP Black can get onto the Shrine faster. They have the fort down in this bottom lane too. This really did seem like the Shrine that would completely change the game.
I think a lot of that comes down to Swoy though, right? If Swoy does not die, or even if Twilight Dream lands, right? That is a very different game, I think we experience here. But I mean, you can't take away from MVP Black. They are doing what they can with their composition to capitalize on any misplay here that happens. And they have found themselves in a position to knock on a keep wall. They aren't ahead in experience. You can thank Zeratul and Dahaka for that. But they are in a position to maybe open up the map. You know, if they get this keep, they suddenly are in a position to end the game if they get a wipe.
Lining up again so that they can get full heals off of Holy Radiance. The keep's gonna go down. Noblesse is behind the team though.
Noblesse is Zul'jin getting chased down by the Punisher. That's a scary life if you're a weak Lunara, but she is gonna be fine. Bounce right on out of there. 5-man commitment here for MVP. Towards the mid, Zhongha finds a Sake isolated, decides he's gonna throw out a bit of damage. That is actually, you can see Zhongha respect the Uther a bit more as this game has moved on. Yeah, even in that trade for a second, typically you would see a Zeratul just go like, I'm going. But if Uther is just the one in that fog right there, you're like, and I'm dead. I have completely isolated. Now, that being said, when 20 hits, as long as Rewind's available, Uther is not nearly as intimidating. Because yes, he can stun, but then it's almost never is there enough burst follow-up directly to be able to not be able to rewind and then teleport out.
It's a great point that you make about Zhongha though, because obviously we have seen a lot of Zeratul play from him and very decisive, fast, insta takedowns from him sometimes in previous series.
Yeah.
So to see that change up not only shows the respect that MVP Black have been able to gain from that, but his ability to understand that he has to change his play. It comes down to him.
Yeah, it is. It's actually, you know, really beautiful to be able to see that, especially when you can genuinely note that in the play, right? Just purely off the compositions.
And Zhongha has been one of the most impressive players this tournament.
Yeah, I very much agree with you there. The impact that he's really managed to have. Also, I'm gonna say, for me, standout for MVP has been Tist.
Oh, yeah.
He's really been, you know, since GCWC, had amazing performances across the board and rising to the top of Warriors within the Korean region and that of the world. But this tournament kind of has locked it in for me, you know, that I consider him, you know, no matter what roster, whether he stay with us forever, change elsewhere, he's the guy that I'm going to be looking at. It's like, this is a playmaker, you know, he can really change the tide of these games. 20 picked up for L5. Shrine up on top, 20 seconds for that. Dahaka is getting some clear. Black is not going to have 20 yet. 1 wave is not enough. I think 2 is not enough either. It's going to be very close off of 2, but definitely within that 3. 2 should be enough there after that one's going to be cleared out. So MVP Black will be able to get up this 20 before the shrine spawns.
That rewind now available for Zeratul. Forest's Wrath for Lunara, so an even easier time of being able to poke with her Thornwood Vine. Only 2 skeletal defenders before MVP Black got heroic abilities. Bob and Weave to give more mobility to Tychus. But now L5 may be looking for an engagement. Hardened Shield used for Tist.
Yeah, Nitrogen, oh man. Noblesse actually just diving deep into this right here. The Expulsion Zone's going to be able to split it here. Reset. Storm Shield's going to be used. Molten Core is baited. And everybody looking for the retreat. So Fear Smash not going to land. At least not full value when it comes to the stun. Jungha is going to teleport out. Reset getting the dash. Drag is going to connect here onto Tis, but he's going to be fine. Sanctification still up. Cleanse is used as well. But the Stormbolt with Jungha, they go in and Sanct hits, keeping him up.
Sanctification keeping him up for now, but that is a lot of heroic abilities that have been used for MVP Black without getting any success in the team fight. Drag on Zarya.
Swipe with the Twilight Dream is actually going to be blocked there by the Void from Jungha. Sake is getting caught out. Noblesse is flanking, and that is going to be a submerge to buy time.
Oh!
Give him the heat, Kyocha.
Kyocha bodying 2 members of Zeratul and Murden moving back. And MVP Black, despite using heroic abilities so early on, staying alive for now. They are not on the point. They have to go all the way back to their keep to tap, and that does give an opening for L5 to get to these defenders, but they will not be able to clear out the shrine before Black returns. I
do want to say that while we have been complimenting Jungha adapting to the composition, I feel like Noblesse has done anything but. In the long run, Lunara wins into an Uther. Even in post 20, it gets worse, but he just instantly initiates, no longer allows them to get the poke. This reinitiation should be in L5's favor, but he has no chill. He is going in at all points, and again, we see him completely isolated there. He is surviving, so Fear Smash gets the pick though, and MVP Black is now finally ahead here in this game. Swoy has to pull it out.
Jungha is the one who gets caught, has Blink though, can get away. Noblesse had Hardened Shield, but at the same time had the Shrink Ray. Expulsion Zone was perfectly placed to keep Noblesse to the team. Went into Avatar, so he used Avatar and died. 2 cooldowns now for L5 just for Murden alone.
This is somehow, you know, when looking at this, I talk so heavily about the Lunara being able to get that damage output, but I feel just again, because Noblesse is just going, this is our time to fight, and it's happening now, and that the cooldowns can be kind of thrown around. You no longer get the value, especially a Thornwood Vine Lunara, right? This isn't, you know, going with that leaping strike, that kill potential onto a single target. She thrives in those scenarios where it's like, here's one 3-man R, and now my W is going to be thrown out. We're going to cycle that again in a couple of seconds, and then, you know, it's not going to help when you have a dwarf friend there just leaping in. Maybe we'll see more patience and adjustment, but I don't think that's the case. Stun comes out. That's going to be a cleanse from Swoy. Not going to be something to have here in the next couple of seconds. And this Punisher is looking for another key.
We have to watch MVP Black's positioning and how much they group now for something like Holy Radiance, because not only is there a possibility of Twilight Dream and Void Prison, but there is Contagion, which is isolation on every member. Sake makes it into his Molten Core, throwing down damage on Nacho.
Oh!
Jenny gets taken out!
They've got 2 of them, and the Punisher now questioning where it wants to move. Odin is going to be dropped here. No big red button, but that is the Molten Swing. SCSC has his burrow. Keep in mind, no adaptation, so that is about the last health bar he has. Swoy still having his Twilight Dream. He bolts, he dreams, but no one dies. Sanctification's used, and is going to nullify the Void right there, but that is going to be it. With 3 members dead, I don't think that L5 has the tools. MVP Black, even with an Uther into a Lunara, is going to be able to take game number 2 and take lead in this series.
MVP Black with stellar coordination, with abilities, with talents throughout that game. Even being willing to back off, not getting panicked. They used a lot of heroic abilities in that final Shrine fight. They went all the way back to their keep to tap, with an understanding that all they had to do was get back in time. They had plenty of time to take out skeletal defenders, and they would be able to make it work. And the Noblesse kill was everything there.
Yeah, it was huge. The early game, I think, was a really big position for MVP Black. The fact that they were successful in Shrines 1 and 2, I think only benefited them, because if they had fallen behind I think the talent tier advantage plus the stat advantage in that poison suddenly would have really been, making it that much worse. Because we did see a lot of the argument of why Lunar is so successful into the Uther. But again, at the very end there, I can't help but feel like a lot of that comes down to Noblesse's approach to the team fight. He's so comfortable with that. This is our fight, and I'm going to win it. But often, if he's got to be successful with the poke, which they very much needed to be there, because Uther is awesome if he doesn't have to worry about the long game. He's absolutely amazing, especially 20, because he's got Storm Shield. So he's actually comfortable with an opening burst rotation, because we saw it there. He's totally fine. Just drop the Storm Shield, throw out a couple of Ws, and you actually can be able to deal with it. But it's after that point, once you've cycled your first rotation, do they have the tools? And the answer was they very much didn't, especially with Zarya and Tyrael, with that pseudo-supporting after.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to supplement that. And that does put MVP Black one game away from winning the grand finals. These two teams have already played a full 5-game best-of-5 series. We're going to see if L5 can bring it back in the next game right after this.
Now we bring them to pain.
Deep within the forests of Lordaeron lies the kingdom of Zul'jin and its zealous guardians, the Forest Trolls. During Azeroth's second war, the Amani warlord Zul'jin struck an alliance with the Orcish Horde in order to eliminate the Trolls' ancient enemies, the Elves of Quel'Thalas. But their pact would not last. With the Horde's defeat, Zul'jin and his kin returned to the forests. Now, drawn into the Nexus, he still seeks a way to enact his terrible vengeance. Zul'jin is an aggressive ranged assassin whose Berserker Rage increases his attack speed and damage at the cost of his health. Zul'jin's trait, Berserker, has both a passive and activated effect. Passively, Berserker increases his basic attack speed as his health lowers. When activated, Berserker increases his attack damage, but also drains his health as he attacks. Berserker can be toggled on and off at will. Zul'jin's first basic ability, Grievous Throw, hurls his axe forward, dealing damage to the first 2 enemies it hits, marking them. Marked enemies take increased damage from Zul'jin's next 3 basic attacks, or until the mark expires. His next ability is Twin Cleave. When cast, Zul'jin throws his 2 axes in a unique circular arc that returns back to his position. Any enemies hit by an axe take damage and are slowed. The slowing effect will stack if an enemy is hit by more than 1 axe. All Forest Trolls have the gift of regeneration, and Zul'jin is no exception. When activated, he channels for a moment and regenerates a significant amount of health. Moving or taking damage will interrupt the effect. Zul'jin's first heroic option, Taz Dingo, provides him some incredible survivability. By channeling the power of the Loa, Zul'jin gains the unkillable status, which prevents him from falling below 1 health until the effect ends. His second heroic ability, Guillotine, is a deadly tool of destruction. This hefty axe can be thrown a large distance and deals immense damage to enemies in the impact area. Guillotine's damage significantly increases as Zul'jin's health lowers. Zul'jin lives and fights on the axe's edge. Activating Berserker increases his attack speed and damage, but costs a small chunk of his health for each of his basic attacks. At low health, Zul'jin dishes out a ton of damage, but does so at great risk to his survivability. Don't be afraid to pull back and use regeneration to reclaim some much-needed health. Both of Zul'jin's heroics play directly into his health pool. At low health, Guillotine's damage increases significantly, and a well-placed throw can take down multiple heroes at once. Taz Dingo can be used in conjunction with Berserker, leaving Zul'jin at 1 hit point for an extended period, maximizing the strength of his attacks. Zul'jin is a strong solo laner, and his ability to ramp up his damage can easily bully enemies out of his lane. Use Twin Cleave to chase them down. Hurl his axes forward and watch as your enemies run right into your slowing blades. Leverage heroes that can shield, like Medivh, Cassadar, or Zarya, to make aggressive plays. Try pairing up Zul'jin with Lieutenant Morales, and have her keep your health steady as you take full advantage of your Berserker trait to tear your enemies to shreds.
You want axe?
Zul'jin, Warlord of the Amani, is ready to enter the fight, whether you want his axe or not. Make sure to leave us a comment to let us know what you think, and you can always subscribe to Heroes of the Storm here on YouTube or around the web if you want to keep up to date. We'll see you in the Nexus.
We're heading into the draft of Game 4 of the Grand Finals, and wowzers, already we are right underway.
Yeah, so Tyrael going over to the L5. The Zero Tool is not an option, but still the Ragnaros comfort there for Sake. Falstad here on a small map, but very high priority. ETC has been taken away as well, so a lot of top-tier warriors in the hands of L5 in this draft, and comfort there for SCSC onto the Vala. And no major, what I would consider more like, I don't know, meta breaking, or at least between these two teams. You know, the value of the heroes has always been the Zeratul, it's been the Tyrael there, and the ETC. And so, you know, the fact that we do see L5 has the better half of those heroes, and even hovering for a possible Muradin ban here.
I'm wondering how things will shake down for MVP Black, having both Falstad and Ragnaros, both Sake heroes.
Yeah, that is actually a really interesting, you know, conundrum there. That being said, probably safer to put Sake on the Ragnaros, and then I feel
Reset, play Falstad.
Yeah, I think Falstad's a bit safer.
Kyocha used to play Falstad.
He did.
But people did not necessarily think that it was his greatest hero.
Yeah.
I think we're still waiting on the Kyocha hero.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think for now it's comfortable saying that Sake's Ragnaros and resets Falstad. Ban out here is going to be the Malfurion, with the Ariel removal, making Lucio that much more valuable. There is no pseudo support left other than Zarya to be able to aid. Ragnaros is going to have a solid single or solo lane, so I mean Zarya is going to be a reasonable option if they wanted to move into that. That being said, still don't think you absolutely need that for a Lucio, but it is a nice cushion, you know, in a lot of the compositions and situations to be able to find yourself in. And that being said, you know, Merryday is Lucio best in this tournament so far, by far. I would say out of what we saw out of the Western and Eastern Clash, he's the best in the world out of those performances. That being said, he is very new, so I don't feel comfortable saying that in the long term he will very much be, but he's definitely got top tier boobs.
L5 willing to risk that though, right? They would rather face Merryday's Lucio than the Malfurion here. Maybe even a possible bait.
Let's see. Nobody wants it. Lucio falls now with the Tyrael. I mean, obviously pretty appealing. What if they let it through? What if that's not the answer? What do we have left in the support department? Brightwing? Not so appealing, especially in a NAS. You do have the Tyrael as a pseudo support with you, but not the direction I go. Lucio are significantly safer across the board with Ariel removed. Malfurion, Rhaegar still up. So
do L5 take Kharazim or Lucio and leave Merryday to play?
You do not take Kharazim away from Merryday. You let that happen. The question is, do you take the Lucio, and let him take Rhaegar, though? See, that's the thing, is we've seen he just Uthers, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, can you pressure him? He just Uthered into a Lunara and he won the video game. Like, that might be enough to be like, well, maybe we should have, you know, stopped considering pressuring Merryday. You know, down there. Nazeebo, though, is something you have to consider when it comes to your support. A triple warrior and a Vala and Rhaegar here for L5 in their draft. Not a dominant one, but their 4-man is very good when it comes to kill potential, just harassment across the board there between ETC, Valazaria, and Rhaegar.
Yeah, Tyrael will hold his own, do all right in the solo.
He just gets out pushed. It's
Yeah.
legitimately just like, well, I can't die, but I can be annoying and shield the minions.
And it's Tomb, so
yeah.
you can make those fast rotations up to help. And honestly, if Ragnaros gets greedy and wants to try to stack his Q at 1, which every Ragnaros pretty much in the history, except for the very few Meteor builds does, they could even maybe get picks with it with ETC.
Meteor build, never forget. There's been the few, the proud. You know, to be fair, it got nerfed before he was competitively acceptable. So, you know, maybe one day in an alternative dimension there was Meteor build as the main build, but we are stuck here with Q. It is so, so powerful. What is it going to be? I personally like the Lucio the best. It is the pick as well. I'm satisfied to be able to see that. How many mosh pits are going to be booped is the real answer. Probably not many, because Sanctification is going to be a thing here into this game. Other than that here, what do you think when it comes to the draft? L5 taking a lot of risks, you know, having such a, I mean, a lot of just raw damage-ish when it comes to the Warriors. Very high health pools for sure. But I can't help but feel like if they're not very successful early on, they're really going to fall behind, not only because of their lack of wave clear just across the board. Val is really the only one that can provide it, but then also just, you know, it's triple warrior. You're going to be lacking in a lot of those damage departments, and I don't know if you've seen Nazeebo post 20, but he can pretty much take both of those warriors, put it together, and you're still lucky if you tap like what even one Q of Nazeebo can make happen.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you is how does Nazeebo work in a triple warrior? If you have those high health pools, again, double shielding from Tyrael and Zarya, is it enough to make it through the late game?
Post 16, he just, like, yes. It just hit, the cooldown is so short once you get to that point of the game, and the single target damage is just so high. It's just like you have to be able to kill him, and since none of those warriors do, not even the ranged assassin does it like percentile maximum health, like the biggest saving grace is the high impact Sanctification, obviously, anytime we have that available. Other than that, I do really feel like because the wave clear is